This week, we're talking about some old bugs, some really old hardware that is about to get its support pulled, a new NTFS driver, news about Fedora and Alma Linux, and then there's Mozilla Thunderbolt. Oh, and the Free Software Foundation has entered the chat. You don't want to miss it, so stay tuned.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is the Untitled Linux Show, episode 251, recorded Saturday, April the 18th. Vibe, but verify. Hey folks, it's Saturday, and you know what that means. It's time to geek out about Linux. It's the Untitled Linux Show. We're here to talk hardware and software, open source, all kinds of good stuff. Linux on the desktop, Linux in the server, Linux in the data center. And I've got the regular panel of guys. We've got Ken, we've got Rob, we've got Jeff, not necessarily in that order, from left to right on your radio dial. And we're going to have fun today. Welcome, guys.
Hello. Welcome. And a lot of people went, dial, analog, what?
Nah. How many people recognize that quote, left to right on your radio dial? There's an old
I've heard it, but I don't know
There was an old sportscaster from like the
Leo
1950s.
gave it, but I can't remember who he said he quoting.
I hear nobody in the audience saying they recognize it, so.
Let's see. Who first said it? Kaywood Ledford. Back in, well, he was born in 1926.
So I couldn't have said it before then.
Yeah, long time ago. Way back in the day of listening to sports on the radio.
AM, and it sounded like in a little tin can.
Yes.
I can't do it, but Leo does it sometimes.
Back in the good old days.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I can remember when you used to sound like tin cans when you were talking over computers.
Yep.
Some days you still do. You still sound like a robot.
He means you specifically, Ken.
Oh, speaking of the good old days, we've got some good old bugs that are finally getting fixed. We actually got several stories about really old bugs that are getting fixed. We're going to let Rob kick it off to talk about Wayland and KDE. And you wouldn't think that we'd be talking about a 20-year-old bug with Wayland, but here we are. How is that possible, Rob?
Oh, are we switching this around?
You're first. You've always been up first.
Oh, yeah, that is the order I have it in. That's right. Yeah, so I do have a trend today.
So, folks out there listening, we are in the market for a new co-host.
For folks out there listening, I did say before the show, I'm tired. Let's get this thing done with. So I am a little sleepy, and I forgot I had reordered my my stuff on the show notes and did not reorder them on my notes. So I'm glad you reminded me which one to start with. But that being said, I do have a trend going on today, and I'm probably going to upset some people, but the news is the news. So let's just get at it. So I'm starting out with this 20-year-old bug, and I'm not the only one with a 20-year-old bug to talk about today, but mine is personal to something I really like to talk about a lot. And so to the story, sometimes the biggest argument for new technology is not flashy features. Sometimes it is a bug report that sat around for nearly 20 years. Back in the day, 2005, KDE users, or a KDE user, filled what sounds like a perfectly reasonable request. And the request is, if you have multiple monitors, why can't each screen show a different virtual desktop? Why should every display be forced to switch together like one giant panel? It's the kind of thing people expect from a modern desktop, especially now that multi-monitor setups are everywhere, pretty common. But modern features can be hard when you're stuck on decades-old legacy code. And so that request stayed open for, 20 years. Duplicate after duplicate piled up from the same request pretty much. Not because KDE developers didn't care, and not because nobody understood the problem, but because X11 itself was the wall. The old EWMH specifications simply did not have a real concept of multiple virtual desktops being active independently on different screens at the same time. In other words, this was not just a missing feature, it was a design limitation baked into that old stack. And that is where Wayland changes everything. It took a modern display manager like Wayland and a PHP developer to fix the issue. Two of my favorite things, PHP, and you guys all know I love to talk about Wayland on here. Now, thanks to a merge request from Hinik Shindenbuk, the feature has finally landed in KWin and is planned for Plasma 6.7. Each screen can now track its own virtual desktop independently. One monitor could stay on like a chat window, let's say, and another can hold code, and then a third you can switch over to show documentation, all without everything flipping at once. It's how a multi-monitor workflow should have worked all along, or at least been optionally available. And if I recall, last time I used Windows and played with their multi-desktop, it's still like that still works like the old KDE setup. So I guess that's one more leg up that Linux now has against Windows. And Windows stole that feature from us anyway, so of course they're going to be behind. But maybe the best part is who made it happen. It's not a long-term KDE veteran, not a giant corporate team. And as I hinted earlier, this work was done by a full-time PHP programmer with minimal C++ background, no prior KDE contributions, and only a recent reason to care. He wanted to move to Wayland for fractional scaling, but this one missing feature was holding him back. Wayland is not only about replacing X11, because X11 is crusty and old. It is about finally making possible the things that X11 could never do cleanly, at least in the first place. Better scaling, better architecture, and now a better multi-monitor desktop. After almost 20 years, the fix did not come from working around X11, but it came from moving beyond it.
Very cool. I've not used virtual desktops for quite a while. It seems like this was one of the things I wanted. Like the moment I got multiple monitors, it's like this makes so much sense. I'm now playing with my KDE install here, getting multiple virtual desktops going again because it's cool.
So you're ready for it.
I've always used multiple virtual desktops. It's just, and as of right now, my virtual desktops are synced so that whatever I have on one virtual desktop is on both monitors. But one thing you didn't mention, or I didn't hear you say, was about how the extended window manager handling kind of crippled X11 as far as providing this feature.
Yeah, I did not mention that, but go ahead if you got more to expand on that.
There you go. Not my problem, but you can pick it up.
Ken got segued. Dun, dun, dun.
Indeed. Is that the next story? Let's see. Ken?
No. The next story is about how a 21-year-old Polish woman fixed a 20-year-old Linux bug.
And this is a different bug than I talked about. So lots of 20-year-old bugs getting fixed out there.
This is in a window manager that is actually older than her.
All right. I'm going to do a little bit more looking into Plasma 6.7 because I have a question. I don't know the answer, but we're going to let Ken pick it up and talk about the bug fix.
Now, before I go on, I want to thank Edmar Pereira and Brandon Vigliarolo. And I know I messed those up real bad. I didn't take time to look how to say them. So I apologize. But they wrote about the accidental discovery and bug fix in a 20-year plus code base for the Enlightenment window manager E16. Interesting name, isn't it? Now, it was discovered, as I said, by a 21-year-old graduate student, Camilla, and this has a whole lot of consonants with one vowel, so another one I'm going to stumble over. Schwarzschick, no, yeah. Well, the Y could be considered a vowel, I guess. Zewick, I'm going to go with that.
Oh, it's a Polish name. It's not pronounced anything the way that we Americans would think it would be. I don't remember how to pronounce these, but
it's like Sueski.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Vowels where you don't see them.
Yes.
But anyways,
it's the opposite of French.
Camellia, while doing some last-minute work on a slide deck for a course she's teaching at Saarland University in Germany. Now, when she opened a PDF in can you remember using the Atrial document viewer? But her entire desktop just froze. Like you'll see my screen do sometimes when I'm talking. Now, according to Camellia, it happened repeatedly until she sussed out the root cause. E16 hung whenever it attempted to truncate the overly long file name of that PDF. According to Edmar, this is a story of the true open source spirit. It's about a person, their computer, a frozen desktop, and the curiosity to figure out why it froze. Now, I'm not going to ruin the story by trying to retell it, so I'll recommend that you read this story about how Camellia isolated and fixed the problem in Edmar and Brandon's articles.
It's super interesting to see bugs this old get found and finally fixed. Like, I didn't know anybody was still running Enlightenment desktop. It's definitely not new. I don't think it's been ported to Wayland. It's stuck on X11, right?
There was an upgrade to E17, but you've got some diehards out there that say they like the customization you can do with E16.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, so I did go and do a little bit of looking. Plasma 6.7 is expected mid-June, like June 16th, so a couple of months out still. We've got to wait a couple of months to get a hold of this new virtual desktop feature. Probably not going to come with Fedora 44, maybe with Fedora 45.
I don't know. 44 keeps getting pushed back, so maybe it's late enough.
That's my story for later. Don't steal it. Don't steal my thunder.
Stop reading ahead.
Yeah, indeed.
I didn't know that was on there last night. Like you didn't have anything on there.
No, I picked some. All right. We've got some kernel news. We're going to let Jeff pick it up and talk about NTFS. What's Microsoft doing in our kernel?
Break to eat first?
Yeah, we're going to take a quick break before that. We'll be right back.
We have a merge request for the 7.1 window for the new NTFS driver. And as a recent update, it was accepted for the 7.1 kernel. Now, before we talk more about this new code, let's have a little history. Now, the NTFS is the file system for modern Windows, and while some will say we've had NTFS support for a long time, it's been a little patchworky. Now, for example, there's been a read-only NTFS driver in the kernel for a long time. But wait, you say, I've been writing files to Windows drives for quite a while. Yes, but that's a different driver, which can do more things, but it's in user space. It's a Fuse driver. Now, Fuse is file system and user space. And it's a user space file system framework consisting of a kernel module, a user space library, and a mount utility. Now, because it's in user space, it allows secure non-privileged, meaning non-root, mounting of drives and partitions. Now, that being said, some will say, no, I know it's in the kernel. Well, that's true as well, because sometime later, around 2020, the NTFS 3 driver was upstreamed into the kernel by Paragon Software. There was the later removal of the old NTFS driver, the read-only one, because no one used it since the NTFS 3 driver was so much better, and you could write files versus just only reading things. Fast forward a few years ago to 2025, and now the NTFS Plus driver has been announced. The goal was to clean things up and give more features and better performance. Now, the original announcement said that as of the last few years, the NTFS 3 driver, now this is the Paragon software one, in the kernel has somewhat stagnated and not had a bunch of active development. A lot of the online sentiment is the kernel driver still has a few rough edges as well. Now, keep in mind, some are also still using the Fuse driver. It has not gone away. So there's a little bit of, when you say, I have NTFS, it could be one of multiple paths. Now, the NTFS Plus is a labor of love spearheaded by Naomi Jian. I should mention, when I talk about making the driver better, it's based off the old read-only NTFS kernel driver. Now, the developer said this about the reasoning behind that. The remade NTFS, called NTFS Plus, is an implementation that supports write and the essential requirements, IO map, no buffer head, utilities, XFS tests, test results, and it's based on the read-only classic NTFS. The old read-only NTFS code is much cleaner, with extensive comments, offers readability that makes understanding NTFS easier. This is why NTFS Plus was developed on old read-only NTFS base. The target is to provide current trends, and he says IO map support, no buffer head, public user space utilities, ID mapped, mount support, delayed allocation, and plans to support journaling. It's got enhanced performance, stable maintenance, and utility support, including FSCK. Now, to back this up, there were some benchmarks, and the benchmarks show a big speed up against the NTFS 3 in multi-threaded tests and minor improvements in single-threaded tests. So the NTFS 3 is the one currently in the kernel now that is stagnating. Now, this has been a 4-year-long effort and has been in the Linux next tree for the last couple months, trying to expose the code to more people to find bugs before it goes into the Linux main kernel, and along with code review from some of the code experts. If anyone is concerned for right now about the new driver, the NTFS 3 driver is going to remain in the kernel for a while. I'm sure it'll be removed at some point in the future. But if the NTFS Plus driver works out as good as it sounds, probably won't be that long before it goes away. Take a look at the articles linked in the show notes for more details and links to other past stories on the driver and the official kernel pull request for the driver.
Exciting stuff there. And
thank you.
Jonathan is muted.
Not anymore, I'm not. I was like, why did Rob just cut me off? Oh, I know why. Anyway, yeah, I've been doing NTFS stuff for a long time, and I remember going through some of this. What's really fun is trying to read NTFS on a Mac is particularly terrible. Really makes me appreciate how good we have it on Linux, as opposed to that hard to use, terrible user interface operating system over there from Cupertino.
There's lots of things that are really terrible on the Mac, but
that's really true.
Well, I was just kind of, I started digging into this for the story because I knew there was a couple different drivers, and then it was like, whoa, this is a little more complicated than I thought. It's just, well, wait, you're using this one or this one, and this one went away, and now it's coming back, and it's
yeah, absolutely.
Well, at least we're not having to go all the way back to the original FAT file system that Microsoft came out.
Although I saw that Microsoft has released an update to FAT32 to where you have bigger drives with it or something. I saw in the passing this week. Anyway, no, we're not looking backwards. We're looking forwards with things like Fedora and Red Hat clones. I got a couple of stories here for the Red Hat world. And the first one up is that Fedora 44, fellow fans, we will have to wait yet another week, because Fedora has returned to form, and we're doing a delay 1 week for the Fedora 44 release. It was going to be April 21st. So about the time that most people would end up listening to this episode, it was going to be out. But there are some outstanding blockers, and so it has now been pushed to April 28th. And that's things like non-ASCII keyboard handling is broken. KDE Plasma has a problem with Plasma Setup's keyboard layout page. There's a problem with ButterFS as an installation drive. There's another install issue, and there's 2 more blocker bugs that have been proposed. So problems that people are saying, look, this should be considered a blocker. Quite a few things to try to sort out in the next week. That's enough. It wouldn't terribly surprise me if Fedora 44 got pushed beyond April 28th. We may be talking about a 2-week delay. We'll see. Obviously, we'll update everybody on this next week. And, it's pretty typical that you can actually do an upgrade. Like the Fedora 44 ISOs will be available for a day or 2 before the official release date. And anybody on Fedora 43, obviously, you could go ahead and do the upgrade to Fedora 44, and it's, things are not going to break. There is, as always, that feature freeze, and then as soon as the full release goes out, then all of those features sort of uncap and you get a whole bunch of updates all at once. And that's always kind of an exciting and fun time that does sometimes break things as well. Anyway, that's Fedora 44. Look a few months further into the future and you've got Fedora 45. Lots of unintentional alliteration going on here. Fedora 45 is considering an x86-64 v3 build. Now, from what I'm reading here, it is not, of course, I suppose that we should take a quick break and cover what this is. This is the processor versioning. I think it originated in the kernel, but it's, x86-64 has been around for a long, long time, and there are multiple groups of extensions that have been added onto x86-64. And if you compile targeting some of those extensions, certain things run faster. Some things run a lot faster. And so you've got various distros have started targeting different run levels, different versions for their processor ISA. Fedora 45, one of the proposals is to do a new primary architecture of x86-64 v3 alongside the baseline x86-64 architecture. And so if you are running a modern CPU, you would want to run those v3 packages, and then old machines can run the old original baseline packages. And this gets you things like support for AVX, AVX2, FMA, other features like that. It does not include AVX 512, as that's considered a v4 feature. And what I'm not entirely certain about is how these two things would be supported together. Like, can you take an x86-64 v1 install and say, now go install a bunch of the v3 packages? That would be ideal, but reading this, I sort of suspect that it's going to have to be a new install or a very sketchy process to replace all of your packages. There might be a way to do it, but that sounds sketch. So that's Fedora. One more thing in this same ballpark is Alma Linux, one of the Red Hat clones. Alma Linux Kitten 10, which that's the downstream of CentOS Stream. They are going the other direction. They are adding back the i686 user space. And so that's the ability to go back and add 32-bit packages to a 64-bit install for things, old programs that require a 32-bit user space, essentially, to be able to run. And so that makes a lot of sense in the enterprise world that you might want to do that, might need to be able to do that. So lots of things going on in the Fedora/Red Hat world these days.
I would like to add a little disclaimer to your story there when you said, basically when you told people to go ahead, upgrade to Fedora 44, things are not going to break. Now, the little disclaimer here is Jonathan cannot be held responsible for you breaking your system if you choose to update before the final release.
I think I said things are probably not going to break.
You
I would
not say probably.
Okay.
You said
Any
things are not going to
system,
break.
any system upgrade can break your machine. I have had to rebuild my machine multiple times, going from one version of Fedora to the next.
Wanted you guys to know.
Yeah.
Do not hold them responsible.
And on the version numbering, just so people are aware, V3, that basically is assumed to match the Intel Haswell architecture from 2013. Mm-hmm. So it is not a cutting edge thing. Version 4 is Skylake, which is 2017. As you said, AVX 512, for example. And you can put those in. You don't have to, you could do one package at a time. You can mix and match. It's just that if you have everything compiled for a higher version number, you get greater benefit because you get that little fractional speed up on your libraries, your kernel, your everything versus only one little piece.
Yeah, when available. So I'm reading the actual Fedora project proposal. This is proposed. It's not accepted, although it's the sort of thing that Fedora is going to love to do.
Ubuntu is looking at this as well.
Yeah, the proposal here says when available, DNF will select packages with the highest compatible baseline. So that does suggest that it's not going to have to be an entire system reinstall to get it going.
Yeah, for example, Cache has different package servers that you're pulling off of based on your version level. Mm-hmm. So not everything is. I'm running V4 right now, but because I have a 7000 series processor from AMD, so it supports V4, but not everything is V4. It's just certain repositories are.
Makes sense. Yep.
And it looks like they're still guessing whether or not it's worth doing because within the last day or so, one person came in and said that he was seeing worse performance after building with the GCC March x86 64 v3.
That's really surprising. I know some of the GCC options targeting like specific processors is underwhelming, but I've always seen like the V1, V2, V3, V4 as being fairly effective. That's really surprising that they would see a performance regression.
It's one user.
Well, I would say it's either a mistake or something, or they found a bug or some really weird corner case. Because I've always seen the higher levels at least the same speed.
Yeah,
not regress.
GCC that's maybe being a bit too aggressive and using some of those vector instructions.
I mean, there could be some case again though, like Jeff says, corner cases where using the vector instructions would be slower, but that's just odd.
Unless they were optimizing it as well, because the high levels in GCC of optimization get kind of wonky, and they actually don't recommend I can't remember all the different levels, but
like 03 is not recommended.
Yeah. 2 is about as high as they say to go, and the 3 starts. Your results will vary.
Mm-hmm.
So don't put 1,000.
I don't think that's supported. I think it's going to error out. I think 3 may be the highest. Anyway, let's talk about some more old stuff. Rob, for whatever reason, it has he's got the old stuff going today. Are you you're doing some let's see, software antiquing, Rob?
I definitely have a trend. All my stories have something related to the other in one way, or mostly one way, but or
are we taking a trip down history?
I mean, in some ways. I mean, it's happening today, but it's something from a long time ago. I don't know. You'll find out. Just sit back, relax, and listen to the words I have to say. I'll try to speak them as calm as possible, even if they upset you and me. So, the x.org server is back in the news again. And as is typical with Xorg these days, it's not for a good reason. A fresh batch of 5 security vulnerabilities has just been disclosed in X.org server 21.1.22. And another common these with the Xorg vulnerabilities, some of these bugs are ancient. We're talking code paths that go back 25 years to X11 R6.6. And that's almost as old as Jonathan, alongside newer flaws introduced in later X.org releases. The list includes an integer overflow, out of bound reads, a use after free bug, and even a buffer overflow. So all the bad things. Most of these can be exposed in uninitialized memory, which is exactly the kind of thing you don't want sitting around in one of the oldest and most privileged parts of the Linux desktop stack. And that is, really the story here is that Xorg is old. It's not classic, not battle test. I mean, it is, but it's just full of old, huge, bloated code base, decades of baggage, designed at a time when security and the internet was barely an afterthought. Nobody worried about those things back there. It was a simpler time. In fact, most new X.org releases now seem to arrive because another security problem has been found. So if there's a new X.org update, it's probably a new bug. 13 years ago, a researcher called X.org security a disaster and said it was worse than it looked. And here we are, more than a decade later, still finding new reasons to agree. Don't get me wrong, it's still better and safer, more secure than Windows, but we have a much better option today. This is another reminder that the future needs to be Wayland, not just the future, but the present for most of us. Okay, there's some weird little side cases, but it doesn't apply to most people, honestly. Not because Wayland is perfect and not because X Wayland magically disappears overnight. You're still gonna have that shim, but because the old X model was designed for a different era and we got to move away from it. Wayland moves Linux desktops towards a simpler, more modern architecture with way less legacy exposure and fewer opportunities for this kind of decades-old complexity to keep biting us. It's not perfect, but in so many ways, it is now better than X. So yes, if you are still using it, patch X.org, patch your X Wayland, but more importantly, try to find a way to keep moving forward and move on, because every new old X.org vulnerability is another argument that Linux shouldn't keep building tomorrow's desktop on yesterday's foundation.
Yesterday's foundation.
And all the experts that worked on X11 are the ones that started Wayland. So the people that knew or mostly understood X11, I hear it's just such a convoluted mess. Nobody truly understands all parts of it. That they said to make it right, we got to start over.
If you trusted the X11 devs, you should trust the Wayland devs. Myself, as a hobbyist programmer, I know what it's like to have old code that you wrote early on in your careers and you built it up as like, you know what, I just need to start this over from scratch. I did that with the program that I sold once, I just added 2 to mine. I didn't give it a whole new name. I just called it LC2 because the first one was LC. But anyway, I know how that goes. It's no knock on the old code. It was in a simpler time.
Well, it was designed when the computer architectures worked very differently than they do now.
Yeah, and we've just been shimming it over the years. And by we, I mean the developers. I haven't done anything, but
except report on it.
Yes.
Speaking of reporting on it, really, shouldn't you say X security? It's worse than it looks.
Some days.
Because I came across a video that puts it that way, and it's by one of the.
What wasn't there news about they were just going to stop doing releases of X altogether? Isn't that where like X Libre came from?
Something.
You mean stop adding features to it, or stop doing security bugs, or
Stop doing
working
security
on...
stop doing releases, period, even with their security problems.
And those people that depend on the X servers just get left behind.
I mean, that is eventually going to happen one way or the other.
Yeah. Well, but a lot of the stuff we talk about, well, these servers and all this stuff, industrial, and they're not running the latest, greatest things. They're running some older, very tested version of something, and they usually don't upgrade unless they absolutely have to.
Because it's such a pain to go to that thing that's not even networked to update it.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
some of that stuff that's not networked has drivers and stuff for custom hardware that nobody's ever going to update, so they don't change it.
You could make the argument that it's more of a security problem to plug one of those things into the network to be able to get the update than it is to just leave it off and running the old thing.
And a lot of that old stuff doesn't need to be on the network. It's performing a function that is not internet related. So, well, it's not secure. Well, it's behind locked doors and not on the internet, and just chugging away quietly.
You have management introduce security issues by asking you to, let's collect some of this data so we can analyze it from this device.
That's when you tell them no. It can't be plugged into the network.
Well, usually when that happens, they know it's insecure, and so there's a ton of like firewalls and monitor. I mean, it's pretty locked off of being able to just get anywhere, and you can't get it on the internet with it. And a lot of times, organizations, you can't even get to it from all parts of the organization. It's its own separate little bubble.
Mm-hmm. It's in this room, that's down this hallway of this remote building, just doing its thing.
No, just more like network wise. You can't, it's very locked down on, you can't just throw a USB drive in it, for example. You can't from out, you can't get to it from anywhere in the company. You have to be in certain locations to be able to log into it, because
like in the same room in some cases.
Yeah, in specially protected little sub networks, that because they realize there's a risk to a lot of this stuff, because a lot of industrial stuff runs very old software, so they don't just keep track of, well, this security issue. They just assume it's horrible, so they build that shell around it network wise.
But can we add AI to it?
Oh.
Yeah, they don't ask that question on that stuff.
Or if they do, they get laughed out of the room. All right, let's move into containerization. We're going to let Ken bring a story about that after another quick break. We'll be right back.
You'll be happy to know that this week, Bobby Borisov wrote about a tool that can make working with containers easier. It's called Container. That's with a K.
Container with a K.
Now, Container is a relatively new graphical front end for DistroBox aimed at KDE Plasma users who want to manage containers from a desktop interface rather than relying entirely on terminal commands. Where's the fun in doing it on the terminal? Built with Qt, QML, and Kirigami, you can create, delete, clone, start, stop, and reboot containers. Open terminal sessions inside them using your preferred terminal emulator, and install package files directly with automatic package manager detection. Container does not replace DistroBox, but adds a graphical management layer for users who prefer to manage those environments from a KDE application rather than the shell. Now, if you are interested in a container, then check out Bobby's article on how to install it.
Yeah, so this is a GUI for DistroBox, which that's the application that lets you run essentially not a virtualized, but a containerized other distro really easily. Use any Linux distro inside your terminal. That's what DistroBox claims.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I've never played with it or used it at all. I feel like one of the container distros actually uses it. Maybe Cubes does. I don't know.
Could be.
Zorin?
No.
This is interesting though. So the picture of the UI that they've got, it's DistroBox containers, and it lists out Archbox, Alpine Box, Debian Box, Ubuntu Box, Fedora Box. And in each of those, you can install packages, you can reboot the container, you can clone the container. It's like a very, very lightweight version of virtualization. I've never played with this. I need to. It looks pretty cool. Get your Ubuntu on without actually having to install Ubuntu.
I guess
Get your Fedora on without having to actually install Fedora.
Well, why would you not want to install Fedora?
Because
I guess
you're running OpenSUSE Tumbleweed.
Cubes doesn't use. I guess those are virtual machines, but maybe nobody does. I don't know.
All right. That is cool. Let's talk about Intel. Jeff has the story about the Intel Core Ultra 7 270K Plus. What a mouthful. Hopefully the performance lives up to the name.
Yeah, I can't say enough about it to overcome that name, but Michael Larrable over at Phoronix got his hands on an Intel Core Ultra 7 270K Plus. Now, this CPU, was released a few weeks ago, and there's been a lot of buzz about it. It's a refresh of Arrow Lake, so this is not an entirely new design, and it's based on the older 200 series of CPUs from Intel, which those were the successor to the 14K series of processors, 14700K, 14900K, so on. While the CPU is not going to be faster than the top-of-the-line AMD CPUs, one place that it has been getting a lot of attention for the refresh is the pricing. Now, it features 24 cores, and it's between 8 P cores and 16 E cores. It's got a 5.5 gigahertz turbo, TBMT 3.0 frequency, and TBMT is Turbo Boost Max technology, which means due to production differences, processor cores vary in maximum potential frequency. So TBMT identifies up to, it could only be one, of the fastest cores on your CPU, known as favored cores. Then it applies a frequency boost to those cores and directs critical workloads to them. So it's kind of internal choosing the best clocking cores is what it comes down to. Now, that being said, it has a 3.7 gigahertz P-core base frequency, 36 megabytes Intel Smart Cache, and 125 watt base power rating with 250 watt turbo power rating, the maximum. Intel launched the Ultra Core 7 270K Plus with a recommended customer price of $289 United States dollars, but as of this writing, all the major online listings have it for $349, again, US dollars. They've been in and out of stock, and kind of why the price increase as well. They either didn't make a lot of them or they're selling a lot of them. My guess is it's kind of a mixture of both. I don't think they thought they were going to sell a ton, but they've been doing better than they thought. So they can, I don't know whether it's Intel or the retailers have upped the price a little bit just because they've been doing pretty well. Now, the hardware heads among us will point out that the P and E core configuration is the same as the 285K, but it doesn't have the 200 megahertz faster clock speed of the 285K on the performance cores. But the 270K Plus does have 100 megahertz faster E-core speed. So lose one, gain another. As of right now, there's no 285K plus, and from what I hear online, there won't be one. The refresh does have an advantage that it can support DDR5 7200 megatransfers a second, while the original 200 series only went up to 6400 megatransfers a second. Now, the reason that this benchmark is later than most of the normal tech outlets is because Michael didn't get his CPUs until after the embargo lifted. So he was behind on getting, being able to getting his benchmarks done. He said his CPU shipped after the embargo lifted, so he was not in the first round of getting the CPUs, the review CPUs. Now, the benchmarking includes that Michael ran includes several other Arrow Lake non-refreshed CPUs, so the first gen there. But there are no previous generation Intel processors, so there's no 1400Ks or any of that in there. But they do have several AMD CPUs, but again, only the current generation is included. So just the 9000 series. There's no other AMD CPUs in there. Now, he did note that he has not got a 265K refresh CPU to test, even though it was released about the same time. I don't remember if they released the same day or within the week, or they were very close. Now, something of interest, he does test the 275K plus with both the older 6400 megatransfers a second memory speed and compares it versus the new 7200 megatransfers a second. So memory speed alone differences can be evaluated. Okay, enough of all that. What were the results of the 340 benchmarks that Michael ran? Using Ubuntu 2604 and the 7.0 kernel, the memory speed increase was overall worth about 1% on average. So you can look through a lot of those different benchmarks, and while the 7200 speed came out on top, it was just neck and neck with the 6400. So, unless you have some laying around that you happen to have that'll go to 7200, I would not even bother with it. Because remember, normally a 10%, kind of the rule of thumb, 10% increase is where people see a difference. The 270K plus was about 2% faster than the 285K, which is currently priced about $200, again, US dollars, more than the 270K plus. So the refresh, it's cheaper and faster. Now, the geometric mean shows that the refresh was giving about 84% of the performance of an AMD 9550X for about 67% of the price. So bang for the buck, the 270K plus is a great CPU, and it averaged power-wise about 154 to 157 watts in power. I will add one caveat to these results, though. If you have a single use or a few heavy CPU workloads you use, I would look at the benchmarks, because while a lot of things Intel was, besting or right in there with AMD, right in the pack, there were a few workloads which they were at the bottom of the charts, and there was some major step in performance difference. If you're a general user, I wouldn't worry about it, because those cases where Intel was way behind was so very specific that they're probably almost not going to be a factor in your use cases, or it's going to be so small you'll never notice it. Personally, if I was in the market for a CPU, I would probably pick up a 270K plus. Great value for the money and a lot cheaper for the performance a person gets. Now, do keep in mind there's going to be limited life in the motherboards, because the next generation is rumored to require a different socket. But there's also rumors out there that Intel is going to try and get more life out of their sockets. Time will tell, but they see what AMD is doing, and I'm sure the motherboard companies are really pushing for that as well. It just makes it simpler to make, unless they are making enough on the redesigns and respinning new boards that they're seeing that as a cash cow. But like I said, time will tell. We'll see what happens. And I'm just going to throw this in here. there's one final rumor that I want to squash. It's been said that some motherboard companies are leaving the Intel motherboard market, and that is not true. While it wasn't worded well, you could say terribly, what some companies were saying is that their current products meet the needs of the Arrow Lake refresh, and there isn't a need to develop a new product. So basically, they're not leaving Intel. They're just not spinning a new board for this refresh because their current 800 series chipsets work just fine with the refresh. So there's no reason to put the R&D and the testing in for something that is going to be replaced not that long into the future. I think end of this year, early next year is when the new CPUs should be out. So why sink all that R&D cost when your current product works just fine? So nobody's leaving Intel motherboard wise. As always, take a look at the article in the show notes for full details and links to the full suite of benchmarks, and happy shopping.
Yeah, interesting. Intel is still shipping an iGPU inside of all their CPUs, right?
Yeah.
So you could do a new machine build if you really wanted to with one of these things. Don't have to do a discrete GPU and get you into something a lot cheaper than maybe otherwise would. It's not going to be a great gaming machine with just the iGPU, but
true. But I mean, maybe you play much slower paced games, and maybe you're not running a real high res monitor or something.
Like Solitaire and Mahjong.
Well, maybe you're playing, Team Fortress. Team Fortress, or you're playing Counter-Strike, or you're not competitive. You're just having fun, But then you throw a GPU in there, and away you go. I was really impressed with the price for performance. And I would seriously look at it because I've never had a top end CPU. I've always stepped down a little bit, and I'll say, I've got AMD now, but I would buy Intel. I don't favor one. I favor whoever gives me the best value for my money.
Mm-hmm. The downside is you're still got to put memory in there. And from what I saw today, I saw a meme today that memory is the new Bitcoin. So I wish I would have invested earlier.
Yeah, no joke.
I got a couple here. Wait, I do. Look at this. I got a couple. Shit. Oh, excuse me.
Wow. Rob was so excited he got a spit take out of it.
Yeah. All right. Well, you know what is the new Bitcoin? It's not memory, but there is something else that is the new cryptocurrency. It's AI. There's hardly a week can go by that we're not talking about some new AI something or other. And this week, it is, of course, Mozilla getting into the game. Mozilla. They have introduced, or at least announced, Mozilla Thunderbolt. It is not a good name.
Not the name is confused with Thunderbird
or Intel Thunderbolt. Yeah, it's not a good name. Not good at all. But Mozilla is announced Thunderbolt, and it is a new AI platform, and you can run your agentic AI locally with Mozilla Thunderbolt. It is intended to be a sovereign AI client. It is, of course, open source, extensible, all of those good things. And it can be used to access AI chatbots for things like research and data analysis and all of the other things that you do with enterprise AI tools. Yes, this is Mozilla trying to be enterprise AI. It can connect to a MCP server, and it can connect to agent client protocol compatible agents. And it also integrates with the Haystack AI platform. I get sort of what they're trying to do, and in a way, this is intended to compete with Copilot on GitHub in some ways. Maybe Copilot in VS Code as well. And of course, we're in a moment right now. The zeitgeist is that if you're enterprise AI, people will apparently throw money at you. So I get why Mozilla wanted to do this, but I really wish that they would just make a good browser and a good email client and call it a day.
That's what we've said for years.
That's what we've said for a long time. I don't know. Maybe Thunderbolt's going to be the next huge big thing. I am less of an AI skeptic than I used to be. I think it is something that's going to stick around in one form or another. It's just too insanely useful to not. But I don't know that Thunderbolt is going to be the ticket to Mozilla's success.
I mean, the name, come on. We already have a Thunderbolt in technology.
And we already have a Mozilla Thunderbird.
I mean, I think that's why they did it. Like, we got Thunderbird, we got Thunderbolt, and now they're going to Thunder something else. They're going to change their browser to be
Thunder browser?
No Lightning.
I personally, I use Firefox all the time, and I use, Mozilla products, but I won't know because as soon as they came out with that AI kill switch, I just flipped that baby on, and I don't want any AI in there.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because you actually use AI quite a bit for doing mostly work tasks, right?
I do, but my problem is I'm like the old man yelling at the clouds. When I want AI, I want it to work correctly, and all these little filler AIs and all this, they're just solutions looking for a problem. Oh, we're going to help you do this. No, you're getting in the way, and you're just bogging me down. When I need AI, I will reach out to AI and it will do a great job. And most of the time,
I was talking to somebody this past week, wondering when graduation is for a specific school, and I was in using Edge. So Bing, the Bing AI response at the top told me Friday, May 20th, and I told that to the people I was talking to. I was like, oh yeah, it's Friday, May 20th. And they're like, Friday, May 20th? I'm like, yeah, that's what it says. And then I looked at the calendar, and May 20th is on a Wednesday. So that is what it said right at the top.
I need to wash my car. It's about a quarter of a mile away. Would it make more sense to walk there or drive? Well, it depends. If you could use the exercise, then you should walk there. This is the new AI Turing test. This is the question.
Well, and that's why, even though I use it quite a bit for my job, you always buddy check it, because sometimes it'll do great things, and sometimes it has a brain fart. It has a stroke and just takes off in a direction. And I'm not talking about it pulls like a single Reddit article or some weird thing where it decides that's a fact. I'm talking about you have a chart of data, and you maybe have 4 columns, and it'll grab the first 2 columns on row 1, and then it grabs the second 2 columns off row 5 or something and tries to put them together. And it's like, it was right here and you screwed that up,
Yeah. I've asked some questions where it just pulls things from multiple things and then puts them together to give me a completely wrong answer. Yeah, they talked about that on that page, but that response had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
AI is the most useful when there is an immediate way to concretely check that it is correct, which is one of the reasons why it is so useful in vibe code style programming, because there's a button you press to compile the program. And if it doesn't compile, you immediately know that the AI messed it up. And you write test code. You have the AI write test code, and you can immediately know if it's messed up. It's one of the reasons why coding is such a killer app for AI, is because there's immediate feedback, and you can very easily know if there is a fundamental bug or not.
Well, well, and a lot of the AI chat bots or whatever, when you ask it something, like if I would have been actually in one instead of right on the search page, it would have given me the sources. So I would have clicked on the source to see where it got that from. And actually it did. It did give me the source. I went to the school's calendar, which was in there. I don't know how it got that answer from the source, but the source was there.
Yeah. The randomness prediction.
Typo.
That's funny. Yeah, I spent some time this past week and a half doing my first. I shouldn't. I've been told I shouldn't refer to this as vibe coding because I'm not a vibe coder. I actually check the output of it. I actually understand the output of what the AI programs. But doing my first big programming task using an AI chatbot, and that is in Meshtastic. We now have, well, it's a pull request still, but we have the equivalent of SSH over the mesh to be able to get a remote shell on a computer. And man, I was able to get the initial workings version of it in just a few hours of work, as opposed to something that would have taken me several days without the use of AI. So I'm more of a believer now. I used to be a little bit more skeptical. I'm a little less skeptical. But I also have had to go in and clean its code. We talked about in our Discord, we talked about that it likes to make lasagna out of code sometimes. It's like, and in this case, it was multiple functions that the body of the function was a single line. And it's because, they wanted to give it a more useful name. And it's like, no, having to dig through all of these layers of function calls is terrible. And so the way I put it is I had to go into the LLM code and pull some of the lasagna noodles out to make it more useful. But it made that process a lot faster. And it's some very cool code now that's almost ready to go.
Well, and see, that's where you're showing that you're a responsible vibe coder, as X1011 says, vibe but verify. Okay, vibe coded something. Verify. Yeah. Yes. Okay, I vibe coded this thing. Now start running tests on it. Is it compiling? Are you getting the correct answer? Is it doing what you should? Is it, is everything correct? I mean, that's the biggest thing and I think that's where people have problems with vibe coding, is a lot of times nobody looks at it. They just, I got the result and I throw it out there, and it's like, no. You need to look and see what it did. Is it running correctly? Is it compiling correctly? Is it,
is the data still there after you're done?
Yeah. Like the time I deleted my digital ocean droplet.
You deleted it. Oh, you're right. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's what it said.
I think this article that we've got here about Mozilla trying to get into being an AI provider is kind of reminiscent of when Mozilla first came out with their web browser during the browser wars.
They are trying to make that argument that it is. I don't know that argument actually holds up. I saw that as well, and I don't know that I buy that. Maybe, but probably not.
But choice is always good.
Yes, if the thing that you're choosing between are actually all useful, and there's a reason for them to exist. I don't know that the world needs 17 of these fancy chatbots.
Well, they never work for. I mean, now I've used a lot of the big name AIs. But the little ones that just, we're going to have a little AI that's going to help you do this. Oh, they are dumber than a box of rocks, and they never work right. And that's what I mean is AI is one of those things you can't just kind of halfway put your toe into. You're either all in or you're not. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these, if Mozilla really wanted to, let's just be honest. They just need to make a good, fast, clean product. Just be done, and they would win browser wars rather than gimmicks. Stop being gimmicky. Just make the lightest, fastest browser and make it really good, maybe extra configurable, things like that people would love.
Yeah. But not too configurable. You don't want to give people too many choices.
Oh, well, one minute you say choice is always good, and now you're saying you don't want too many choices.
Because then you got to make that decision.
You can leave it default. You don't have to decide.
Yeah.
It's just like
KDE is yeah.
I personally like my knobs and widgets and being able to fiddle with stuff, but I know not everybody does.
I like them, but
I'm used to getting my hands slapped too, Jonathan.
Yeah. All right, we got to move on, and we're going to talk about Mint here in just a moment. But before that, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right, Rob, hit us with Mint.
And here is the big story that all my other stories have been leading up to, in a way. But so, Linux Mint has some good news and some bad news. And honestly, both point to the same bigger story. Mint knows it has fallen behind. The developers at least do, especially when it comes to modern desktop Linux. The headline this week is that Linux Mint is moving to a longer development cycle, with Linux Mint 23 now not expected until December of 2026. That's this year. So right around Christmas time. We've already mentioned on the show that they were considering extending the release cycle, and now it is confirmed. Clement Lefebvre says the goal is to spend more time fixing bugs and improving the desktop instead of rushing through the old release rhythm. But let's be honest about what this also means. This also means the absolute earliest we could see a stable Wayland on Mint is the end of this year. But when you're still talking about early Wayland work like screensaver, removing old x.org dependencies, and getting Cinnamon to behave well on Wayland, it's hard to see it being ready by then. So with this new release cycle, we are realistically not looking at a real Wayland support until the end of 2027 at best. And that's a good 4 years behind pretty much everyone else. I mean, at least all the big mainstream major distros out there. So for years, Linux Mint has built its identity around stability, familiarity, trying to be like Windows. And that has worked well for the users who want something dependable. But the Linux desktop world is moving on. And GNOME is deep into Wayland, KDE is deep into Wayland, new features like better scaling, HDR, better input handling, and the long-term future of the Linux desktop are clearly heading in one direction. And Mint, especially Cinnamon, has been late to the transition, a transition that should have begun over half a decade ago. I mean, they should have started. Everyone else started, and they worked towards it. And Mint is only starting to kind of get to that point right now. It's like maybe they didn't think Wayland is really gonna go anywhere and replace X. When everyone else could read the tea leaves. I don't know. The good news is that Mint seems to know this now. This longer cycle is not just about waiting longer to ship. It's about buying time to actually do the work. Mint 23 is already using Cinnamon 6.7 unstable. It is getting new Wayland screensaver, replacing the older Ubiquity installer with LMDE, the Linux Mint desktop installer. And developers say they are continuing to remove remaining Cinnamon ties to x.org. And that's real progress, even if it is overdue. So, this is the Mint story right now. A little slow, a little late, but maybe finally get serious about it. The extended cycle is not something to celebrate on its own. In many ways, it is an acknowledgement that Mint development has not kept pace. So, even though they are late to Wayland, my fear has been, and what I've told people, that, people are always like, they'll get there. My fear was that when they get there, then the next big thing is going to come out, and they would be late to that. And then the next big thing, and then they'd be late to that, and they would just always be behind. But maybe with this new push and development cycle, it'll help them keep up better in the future. 2028 may just be the year of the Linux Mint desktop.
Oh, that last cut was the deepest. Oh, goodness. That's mean, Rob.
I thought it was always the first cut that was the deepest.
Not in this case. It's interesting to see the comments on like the 9 to 5 Linux article is different Linux Mint users who are sort of talking about, look, we don't want to be bleeding edge on everything. It's fine that it's coming late. We just want a stable desktop that doesn't change very much. I think I get that. I can understand that. This is why Linux Mint is the desktop you put your grandma on.
It's almost kind of going to sounds like LTS,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. It's becoming a long-term
just not
support.
officially.
Yeah, they have 3-year support, I think, unless that's changing too with this new life cycle.
Is this what you call a rolling LTS? They keep rolling the next one out?
Wow. Guys are just vicious today.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it had its time and it's fallen behind, especially with all these Xorg vulnerabilities that we're always bringing up and that are 20 years old. So who knows who's found them before the devs found them. And all the features, this new, okay, they're not using KDE, but there are new features. So, and to say that, I've always thought Mint should use KDE. In fact, April 1st of this year, I saw it posted. April 1st of this year, I saw it posted that Mint was going to switch to KDE. And I was so excited. and then I read the comments and realized what day it was. Come on. It don't make sense.
Well, but at that point, it's really stepping on the toes of Kubuntu. You have almost two identical.
Well, there's already a Cinnamon version of Ubuntu.
But how can they step on the toes if they're two versions behind?
I mean, the big
idealistically,
the big differentiators that people like about Mint these days. I mean, one, it's they style it similar to Windows, which that's not my thing, but whatever. You can customize it, that's fine. And the other thing is that there's no snaps in it. So it's Ubuntu without the snaps, which I could really appreciate that. Now just give me a KDE spin and boom, I'm sold. Instead of all they want to do, like their only options, they have 2 desktop options by default. And both of them are like the 2 oldest things you can get. You get Cinnamon, which is a fork of GNOME 3. And then you have XFCE. I mean, XFCE is still a thing today, but it's a slow roll thing that prides itself on being behind. So, I mean, that's what I mean. If you're going to be they're going to be a distro, but maybe have one option that's like old and slow. Pick Cinnamon XFCE. I don't care, and then pick another option that's modern.
Well, then
get us all in here.
Ubuntu without snaps
sounds like Debian.
Debian
Yes.
with KDE.
Well, I mean,
because now the Debian is you can include the non-open source bits on it. The whole Ubuntu, including all that stuff, it's like the differentiation isn't really that big anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start going, well, let's just Debian with KDE. Oh, you want really stable Debian? They got that. You want more testing? They got that. So you kind of already have the solution existing, and it almost gets redundant.
But Debian takes a lot more work still compared to Ubuntu and then Linux Mint, which is based on Ubuntu. Like they do their installer and they make things easier for the more general user. Not that Debian's hard to set up, but it's a little. I don't know how to say it, but it's a little. There's a little bit more to it.
It's a little bit more to it than just sticking a USB stick in and turning the computer on.
Well, when was the last time you tried Debian?
I don't know. Within the last 6 months.
Oh, okay.
I'm thinking that Ken is just over there, can't hardly contain himself. He wants to tell us that we all should try OpenSUSE Tumbleweed.
You're absolutely right.
Tell us why.
But yeah, what's new there?
Ken?
What's the selling point?
Well, I'm going to ask Bobby Borisoff and Morris Nesker to help me with explaining this, since they wrote about the latest changes to OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. According to Bobby and Marcus, Tumbleweed replaces grub2-bls with systemd boot as the default bootloader. Now, Bobby's article even includes screenshots of the new bootloader for new installations. This transition to the new bootloader occurred in 2 phases. Back in November of 2025, OpenSUSE changed the installer default from Classic Grub2 to the Grub2 BLS, which remained a Grub2-based solution. Now, as of this update, Tumbleweed has even advanced further by making systemd boot the default for new installations. A key advantage of adopting BLS-compatible boot setups is simplified integration of new features and improved compatibility with modern full-disk encryption workflows. Now, according to Marcus, Tumbleweed users using the GNOME desktop environment will be happy to learn that the latest release, GNOME 50, landed this week in the stable repositories as an upgrade from GNOME 49.5. The middle click paste feature was disabled, so if you're using it, just re-enable it from the GNOME Tweaks tool under Mouse and Touchpad. I do recommend reading Bobby and Marcus's articles if you want more details on this update to OpenSUSE Tumbleweed.
Interesting. There hasn't been a whole lot of uptake for systemd boot yet, has there? I don't think Fedora is using it, which is kind of surprising. Fedora is a place where you'd expect to see that come about first, and I don't think we're using it yet.
Yeah, or these days Ubuntu. If it was based on Rust, it would be Ubuntu.
Sounds like I need to reinstall my Tumbleweed.
Cashy has it as an option.
Oh, does it? Okay.
As an option?
Yeah. You can
Everything's
pick
an option in
different-
Cashy.
Yeah.
Is it the default option?
No.
I don't think there are default options, at least for a lot of things.
I think you're right, Rob. I don't think there is a default. I know it.
You have to choose
I've read
one.
some stuff that systemd is a little more limited if you're like dual booting or you've got multiple partitions. It's a little less friendly. I stuck with Grub because it's kind of the devil I know.
Mm-hmm.
But
Grub these days, if you don't necessarily know what you're doing, it's a little what is the word I'm looking for?
Dangerous?
No. There's roadblocks to dual booting these days. Just because by default they've all removed OS Prober, so you always have to enable that again. In the old days it was just there and it's like boom, it just works. Hey, and now a lot of people are like, hey, I mean, I've seen this question quite a bit online, and I've for like brief seconds be like, why didn't my other thing show up? Oh yeah, I gotta enable OS Prober. It's like, okay, let me figure out how to do that again. Every time it's like, I'm not a fan of that change, but. Or ask when you're installing. Ask when you're installing. Are you going to be? I mean, I think maybe some do ask. Are you going to have multiple OSs? But dual booting is so common that I don't know. Leave that in there for now. Whatever.
It's probably a security problem, honestly.
I think that's why they did it, because then you can't load on a little something that looks like an operating system and it loads in and does some nefarious things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, like detecting Windows on there. That's, detecting old operating
virus
that do nefarious things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Windows is a virus.
Oh, don't sue us, Microsoft. So let's talk the kernel. Back to Jeff, back about the kernel 7.1. We got the new file system driver, NTFS, but we are losing some things too. What is going out with 7.1, Jeff?
And apologies to Ken from the outset here, but I have a pair of stories linked in the show notes for this week with one thread connecting them. 32-bit in the kernel is looking very shaky at the moment. While not the total end of 32-bit, we can see it from here, and at least for the x86 anyway, it's going to be on life support soon. The first story is where Linus Torvalds accepted the merge request to start to remove the Intel 46 code from the kernel. Now, this patch doesn't actually remove the code. It removes the kernel configuration options for the M46, M46SX, and ELAN CPUs. Now, if you don't know that one, ELAN or ELAN is a family of 32-bit CPUs from Intel, which were meant to be for embedded applications based off the x86 family. Now, what does this mean? It means while the code is still in the kernel, you can't compile it for a 486 CPU. Now, this is done so if there's big complaints from the public with reasons it needs to stay in the kernel, the options to compile can be added in and things move on without needing to make huge code changes. So it's kind of an easy way to test and see who's going to complain about it versus actually going through the entire code removal. So if no one complains or just a tiny bit of noise is made, one or two people, then it'll be removed in a future kernel. If there's a need now to keep running the 486, if they say, okay, we're getting rid of it, and you're one of the people saying, I still have to have it, the 6.18 LTS kernel is going to be around until December of 2027. So keep that in mind if you have hardware running that's, running this. It's, this at this point, it's pretty old. The 486 came out in 1989, and for desktop and laptop use, it was discontinued in 1998. The embedded systems continued on until 2007, but highly unlikely a person that has an embedded CPU is going to need the latest, greatest distribution. So realistically, the last desktop or laptop running this was made about 28 years ago. Now, while I'm not a fan of e-waste, there comes a point where something just isn't suitable for use anymore. And while the CPU, and that's not even counting, the CPU might be fine, but getting memory or a motherboard could be a major issue. Now, in the second story, there's a poll which might affect their other 32-bit hardware. The kernel's inode field is an unsigned long number, which has time went on resulted in hacks for hashing 64-bit identifiers into the 32-bit field. So basically, as the kernel went to more and more 64-bit support and 64-bit systems, they still had a 32-bit field, and so they had to make some little hoops they were jumping through to make that work. Now, starting with the 7.1 kernel, the field is going to be an unsigned 64-bit number. So this means the 64-bit systems won't have to do any hacks, and it will make the code cleaner. What this does mean for 32-bit systems, they will see the struct inode grow by at least 4 bytes. This could have an effect on slab cache sizes and field alignment. Comments about this reference they are working to deprecate 32-bit systems in the kernel, so while it could cause a slowdown as the 32-bit systems now have to handle the larger number, excuse me, the feeling is it shouldn't be that big of an issue. Linus Torvalds commented that the field could be eliminated because Linus Torvalds commented that a field could be eliminated because, and I'm not reading the names of them, but the field was the actual holding place for the 64-bit number for 64-bit systems. It might not be a really big deal for the 32-bit systems to handle this, but now the hacks make it work are going to be on the 32-bit people, not on the 64-bit people, which are the majority. I don't think it'll be terribly long before 32-bit systems are removed from the kernel entirely anyway. So just like how there were a lot of hacks and workarounds for 16-bit systems, when removing 32-bit system, that also amounts to code cleanup. Not to mention a lot of the 32-bit systems are old and developers don't have the hardware anymore to, test and maintain the code. We've seen that before in the past where they say, I'm supporting some of this old code, but I don't have any hardware that supports it. I need people to run and test this because I have no access to hardware this old. But have a look at the articles linked in the show notes and let us know your thoughts on the Discord about the life of 32 bits in the kernel.
Yeah, so this is interesting to think about. They're currently removing the 486, and that was I'm trying to figure out how many generations there were between the 486 and moving to 64-bit.
Well, there's a 20-year difference between the AMD Athlon 2 X2240 that I've got in my old Lenovo ThinkCenter A63. And when the last 486 came out.
Yeah. Was Pentium 4 essentially the end of the 32-bit series?
I don't
Sounds
know
right.
off the top of my head.
I think so.
And another thing is, you got to remember, with all those old 486s, they were all single core chips with no caching or pipeline techniques on them.
Yeah. Apparently, there is a Pentium dual core, is what they called it. That was a 32-bit. Some of them were 32-bit and some of them were 64-bit. So essentially, you've got the Pentium 1 through Pentium 4 are what are going to be remaining in the kernel after 386 is dropped. So that's still a reasonably wide range of hardware.
I've got to dig in an old Dell that I've got sitting behind me and see if that's a 486 or if it's one of the earlier ones. I think it's old enough that it may have a 386 in it.
And there was talk. This is for the x86, but there's actually talk about when will like ARM or some other 32-bit systems start being deprecated. Nobody's doing anything right now about it, but at least the talks are starting, which means it'll probably be a few years before anything happens, but it's at least being thought of to start cleaning 32-bit out of the kernel.
Yeah, ARM32. There's like ARM is quite a different story because there's like 4 or 5 different ARM targets there. ARMv, like ARMv5, hardly anything still supports it. And then I think current gen 64-bit ARM cores are ARMv8, if I remember correctly. So like I guess it's similar to the x86 story with there being multiple generations in there.
With Raspberry Pi, you could say there's 5 generations.
There's not, though. There's really about maybe 3, because the 64-bit Raspberry Pis are all essentially the same. Not processor speed, but like the ISA is about the same.
And that's 4 and 5.
Yeah. So I remember if the 3B Plus may have been capable of 64-bit. I don't remember. That was a weird one. Anyway, we shall continue watching this in the kernel. There's one last story that we have here to cover, and it's sort of an update on what we talked about last week with the Office weirdness. And Only Office and LibreOffice and Nextcloud and all these guys over there tussling over licenses. Well, one of the interesting things that happened there was Only Office basically said, "Oh, no, you can't. We're open source. We're using the AGPL. We added some terms to it." And we talked last week about this question of what terms can you add to a free software license, because the free software license sort of inherently says you don't get to add terms to this. And we talked about the fact that Red Hat essentially does this. And now the folks at Only Office do the same thing. Well, this prompted Free Software Foundation to make a statement. And we've got linked to it in the show notes. And Free Software Foundation led with the title of "You cannot use the GNU AGPL to take software freedom away." And that sort of, in a nutshell, covers what they're going to say here. They basically said that you don't get to actually add text to the AGPL and continue to call it the AGPL. When in your software itself, it says that something is licensed under the AGPL, it means the authentic AGPL, the one that we published, not some other license that you're calling the AGPL. Basically, you can't do this. The way that you're doing it, you can't do it. And, one of the things that Only Office did is, for instance, they said, if you fork Only Office and continue to distribute it, you must use the OnlyOffice name and image. Let's see. See if I can find the exact quote here. You must retain the original product logo when distributing the program. That's it. Well, that product logo is copyrighted. So like there's just some things that were done to make it very difficult to fork OnlyOffice in the way that we're used to open source software being forked. And Free Software Foundation came out and said, no, you can't do this. They close here by saying, we urge OnlyOffice to clarify the situation by making it unambiguous that OnlyOffice is licensed under the AGPL v3 and that users who already receive copies of the software are allowed to remove any further restrictions. Additionally, if they intend to continue to use the AGPL v3 for future releases, they should state clearly that the program is licensed under the AGPL v3 and make sure that they remove any further restrictions from their program documentation and source code. Confusing users by attaching further restrictions to any of the Free Software Foundation's family of GNU General Public Licenses is not in line with free software. There you go. Free Software Foundation drops the hammer.
So
Don't do it.
What they want is a different license, their own license, or maybe there's something else that fits what they want, but it's not the AGPL.
And it's questionable whether the license they want is actually free software or open source at all.
Right. No.
So
yeah. And this was 2 weeks ago.
Okay. 2 weeks ago, not one.
No.
Yeah. Very, very interesting to see, though, as the story continues to percolate along.
Unfortunately, the weekend I took off and I missed it.
And are they just asking for whoever forks it to give recognition to the original source, or are they just?
So OnlyOffice is, from what I can tell, they basically want to be able to control the ability to fork the project.
Or at least they want other people to know that if someone else forks it, hey, that's OnlyOffice. We did that.
Yeah. So it's adding additional restrictions on a fork that are really not compatible with what free software has always been about. And so that is the essence of the fight here. And we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, the multi-layered struggle between LibreOffice and OnlyOffice and Nextcloud. And it seems like there's another player in that. The Europe office or whatever that's called, I forget.
EuroOffice, yeah.
EuroOffice. I was close. EuroOffice. Yeah, it's such a weird story. Everything about it is very odd.
Yeah, they were having a big fight. Yeah, the week you missed, I remember it was like there is more a bigger fight than X versus Wayland or Vim versus Emacs, or it was every
Microsoft
Office suite
versus Apple.
Yeah.
Every Office suite was having issues with somebody else,
except for OpenOffice. I didn't hear anything from the OpenOffice guys.
Oh well,
yeah,
he's too busy trying to answer his emails.
Yeah,
that was a little mean. I'm sorry.
One question we do have is, what does forking mean in software?
Oh, that is a good question.
Yeah, so it's when you have a software project. So maybe Jonathan's writing a software project, and I disagree with the decisions that Jonathan's making. I make a copy of the software, and I start making my changes that I want to see. So I forked it. So it's like a fork in the road. It's one code base until we copy it and start making different changes. And so then the software goes on two different paths from that point forward. So
at least one well-known example is OpenOffice and LibreOffice. OpenOffice has been a thing for a long time. They're much more history to it.
Our office.
But but OpenOffice, there was some disputes about direction and things internally anyway. So this group says, hey, we're going to fork this and now make it our own. And now we have LibreOffice. Now that doesn't mean OpenOffice goes away. It should, but it hasn't. So now you have the LibreOffice guys adding all new features and keeping LibreOffice going, and you have the OpenOffice guys pretending like they're keeping it going, at least offering downloads still.
Wow, that's cruel, Rob. Really cruel.
They do a few updates. They do some updates too once in a while.
Yeah.
And is it Cinnamon a fork and GNOME 2?
GNOME 3
or 3?
Yeah.
Cinnamon. Okay. Yeah, Cinnamon comes from GNOME 3, and GNOME 2 is Mate.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay.
KDE. I don't remember which one is Trinity. 2?
Trinity is it's 3.
3. KDE 3. I can't remember.
Trinity is 3. Rob, have you never been to church in your life? Trinity is 3.
I did not put that together. That obviously makes sense. We don't really talk about Trinity much. Not like all the GNOME forks. There's a lot more drama.
So this week we need to not have Rob, donate for coffee. We're going to donate for Rob to have Hooked on Phonics, so he can learn all this stuff.
Remedial grammar.
Yeah.
Oh. Interesting
Rob,
times. One other thing in the area of forking, we talk about forks. We're generally talking about like semi-hostile forks. There are also friendly forks, and software gets forked constantly because that's what a PR is, a pull request. That is where someone forks software, makes a change, and then says, "Hey, why don't you take my changes back?" So like forks happen all the time with healthy software. What is less good is a fork, and then the person that forked it said, everybody should use my software instead where it's been forked. And that's kind of the hostile fork idea. So I think it is time to move on to command line tips. We are going to take a quick break, and then we're going to let Rob jump in with the NetWatch. I don't know what this is. I thought I knew what this is, and then I read it again, and I have no idea what it is. So we'll be right back, and Rob will tell us all about it.
All right. So my tip this week is NetWatch, or NetWatch-TWi. So NetWatch is not something you wear on your wrist like the Pine Watch or anything like that.
I was totally thinking it was the OS for Pine Time. It's like
that would be cool, but it's not. It's something else. I mean, there's other options out there like this. This is not unique, but it's one more option to monitor your network traffic. So for those watching, I have NetWatch-TWi brought up, and so here you can see receive and transmit packets as they flow across. I'm just going to bring a little speed test up and let that run. And also you can see that my usage jumps up. It's going to first jump the receives, and then the transmits are going to jump afterwards. There's this thing here that shows the top connections, Firefox. That's about all I did. The Network Manager. You have some health stuff down below, gateway, the latency, the loss, DNS stuff, some errors, drops, various things down there. Now, there's also, I don't want to do it with the mouse, I want to do it with the keyboard. If I toggle down, I have at the top, I press the down arrow, now it shows a menu at the top. So I have other things I could do here too. Besides just look there, I have on 1 is the dashboard that you're looking at. 2 just shows all the connections. And I could go on one of these, and there's things at the bottom. You can see there's like a T if I wanted to do a trace route on it. Record or freeze. So 3 shows my interface. This is nothing special there. But 4 shows my packets. So there is a packet capture built right into it. So I could stop this when I wanted, filter, follow, record, all the things you might want to do with a packet capture. There's also an E for export. So you got packet captures right in there. 5 just kind of shows a bunch of stacks, the protocol hierarchy, HTTPS, that's kind of the big one. You got a little bit UDP, and then all the others are well down below. You got some latency numbers below there. And if I do 6, it shows the topology of the networks, which is kind of neat. So it shows the layer 7 for those who know the OSI, the UDP and all that stuff, and it's got the device and to the gateway and to the DNS. And anyway, that's a little thing. You got S, which is a timeline of things that have happened. 8 is the processes using the network. I don't have a whole lot going on here because it's a demo machine. Anyway, and that is it. It's just a nice TWI monitoring tool to monitor your network and see what's going on.
Yeah, very cool. I used one of the tips that you brought a few months ago. One of the network scanners. I was working at a hotel, and they had cameras that were down, and I plugged my laptop into it, and I went and I checked on our spreadsheet to figure out what the name of it was, then went and installed that and used it to find the cameras. It was very useful. So thank you for that.
I need to update my vibe coded one because I have new code on my computer that I have not pushed that really adds a lot of features to that other one. But
yeah, cool. Do it, man. All right. Up next, Jeff. WTF, Jeff?
Yeah, my command lines actually ties in pretty good with that. So my command line tip this week is WTF, or more accurately, WTF util. It's written in Go, and it's just a very modular way to create a custom dashboard in your terminal. So the way it works is the entire dashboard is made up of individual modules, each pulling data from a different source. You just choose what modules you want to include, how big or small each one is in relative size in the terminal, and exactly where it sits in your terminal or on your dashboard. So the result is a completely personalized terminal dashboard showing only the information that matters to you. So on their GitHub page, they have an example, which also can be found in the article linked in the show notes. The dashboard shows the weather in Barcelona, a to-do list, a monitor showing changed files and recent commits for a GitHub page, a calendar with scheduling items, the power status of a system, looked like it might have been a laptop or something like that, uptime in another window, and a window tracking some recent Jira tickets. So it can be any information you want in any size and any shape you want. Now, the article linked in the show notes shows several ways to get it, from using Brew, pulling from the AUR, or getting your distribution's precompiled binary from the GitHub page. When running the program for the first time, it comes up with a default dashboard. And when you want to make changes, there's a .config/wtf/config.yml file that you edit. The article goes into details how to make changes, and the author says that they're not a programmer, and it was easy for them to get the dashboard they wanted. They even give a prompt examples so you can use AI to generate the configuration that you want. So have a look at the article linked in the show notes, and it also includes link to the home website for WTF and links to the GitHub page. So happy configuring.
Very cool.
So does that come? It comes with available modules, but I'm assuming there is probably some documentation, or
yeah, it's got documentation, and it's all
so
the
you can
modules
make your own.
Yeah, the modules aren't all built in. They're not built in, so you get them from like the WTF website and the GitHub.
Okay.
But there, and other people have created custom ones. There's but yeah, you can definitely create your own and add them in there as well.
My own little side project I've started working on myself has to do with custom dashboards, but it's web based.
Oh, okay,
cool.
Oh.
So look at WTF. That actually looks really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because how many times do you have something like, I know, like BTOP or something like that? Maybe you're like, well, I don't care about this info. I want to know more about this information, and wish you could totally rearrange some stuff and change what's in there. And
well, that's when you put a CRT next to your server, a CRT monitor, that is, for those who don't recall that term.
Cathode array tube.
Yes, and then you put your WTF dashboards on there and just display what you want for your server.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You don't have to use CRTs. You can actually use modern LCDs and get the same thing.
Yeah, but that doesn't use enough electricity.
How else are you going to heat the room?
Yeah.
I wonder if you could set up a module to take advantage of the tool I'm about to go over.
Maybe. Why don't you tell us about it?
All right. Well, Jonathan, this week I have a command line tool for managing virtual video devices on Linux. It lets you create, configure, and remove virtual webcams without reloading kernel modules. You can also query the status and capabilities of existing virtual devices or set timeout images to display if a video stream drops. Now, you will need the V4L2 loopback module loaded. I'm going to bring up my screen here, and I've got OpenSUSE Tumbleweed running in a VM so I can demonstrate. I'm going to start off by going with the command for listing your virtual modules. You do need to be root.
Or run the sudo.
That helps. That way I don't have to keep logging in and out. And the basic command is sudo v4l2 loopback-ctl list. And it's asking me for the password. This does not have that option to display how many characters I'm typing, thankfully. But there it gives the list of what virtual webcam I currently have set up in my VM. That's from way back when I was playing around with trying to do OBS from the VM and go pipe out. But now I'm going to add a virtual bridge.
A virtual bridge.
That's what I'm going to call it anyways.
Oh, okay.
And there it showed it came back with 01. So let's go back to the list. And it lists the two devices.
Yeah.
And you can query the device by just typing, let's spell it right, query. Device video 1. And you'll see. Now, those all those options that you see in the command I used up there are what told it to set the card label to virtual bridge, the max width and height to 8192, the buffer to 4, and
Max openers to 10.
Yep, max openers to 10.
Cool.
And the -X to 1 turns on the whether or not it's exclusive capture.
Aha. Got it.
Now, why would you need that?
Which exclusive capture?
Yep.
Wasn't there something with the browsers being able to use a device?
Yes, it is.
Do you have to turn exclusive capture on for a browser to be able to use it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Now that we've got that set up, I want to demonstrate using this to capture a test signal that I'm generating with FFmpeg. And we're going to watch that in VLC.
Oh, cool.
And if you've ever used VLC, you could actually have opened it up. Let's do this way. Going into capture device and select the device name and hit play. Now you can also set VLC up so you can stream that out.
Yeah, that's the L, the LAN part of VLC. It's the video LAN client. All kinds of tricks VLC knows about.
And this is going back to WPCTL status. You can see that it's showing both devices as available, but it's not showing that stream at this time.
Yeah, WPCTL, that's wire plumber control.
Correct.
It's not really a pipe wire stream. It's a V4L2 stream. So yeah,
Right.
probably doesn't know about it. One of these days, we'll get a replacement for the V4L2 loopback device. That'll be pipe wire.
We're getting closer
Yep.
because this is my QPW graph,
Mm-hmm.
and it's showing my webcam, and it's showing my virtual camera from OBS Studio.
Nice.
You just can't see the video interface on the browsers
Right.
to tie them in.
Yep. We're so close.
That's the next step. Get the browser menu coders to come up with that option.
Yeah. All right. Very cool. So last week, I promised everybody we would do a tour of a working Grafana, and I did take some time today and get that going. And so let's take a look at a Grafana instance where we've got, let's see, I should be able to, if I hit the right button here, yeah, go full screen with this. This is Grafana pulling information directly from the framework, the laptop I'm on. That's these cards on the right, but then also a Raspberry Pi 5 over Meshtastic. And these are the cards on the left. And so the bits of info that I'm currently pulling and graphing are the 3 load indicators. I'm also grabbing the amount of disk free and the amount of memory free on each of these devices. You can see that my Pi is steadily using up memory. I'm sure at some point it'll free this up and it'll jump back up to almost 8 gigs free. But that's where it's at the moment. And there's a couple of interesting things to note here. One is on the disk free. I have these set up slightly differently. You can probably tell. On the Pi, it's all 433 gigabytes, and it's giving me very fine-grained bits of info here as far as you can see just about every time a file is written or deleted. Whereas over here on the framework, it's a very boring straight line. And this is pretty interesting to look at. So if we edit this particular graph, a couple of things here to note. One is down here under standard options, you can choose the unit, and I have it set to bytes, SI style bytes. And that's how it knows that these are gigabytes and not just, 800 billion. But here you can set the min and the max. And so I've set the min on this one, the minimum, to 0. And that's why it's got this graph pinned at 0 bytes at the bottom. And it's giving me sort of an overall view rather than a really, really detailed view about, each time bytes are used and then later released. The query, again, we talked about this last week. The query is real simple. We're just pulling from MQTT. Then we're pulling the payload apart because it's JSON, and we're matching against one of these values to only get a particular machine. And then we're filtering which of the information that we want so that we don't have everything up on the same graph. And what I've been doing, let's say we wanted to pull system uptime as well. So I'm going to go here to the framework memory free graph. And one of the options here under more is to duplicate. Well, so I can duplicate, get a second graph, and then I go into the second one and edit it. And I'll go back into transform and I'll say, instead of free mem bytes, I don't care about that, but I would love to see uptime seconds. Now, this is a, kind of a boring graph in this particular case. But, you imagine for certain things, this is going to be very useful to be able to watch your uptime. And they're not bytes. So we'll go down here. We'll change it from units. Currently, it's under data. We'll go date and time. Maybe. I don't know for sure which one this is going to be. Times seconds. There we go. And this is something that happens reasonably often working with Grafana, particularly with this MQTT, is you go to no data, and that's because this is all ephemeral data. It doesn't have it doesn't have long-term storage, but so you can rename it to uptime, and and it's now telling us 4.49 days. We can save and apply, and then it'll show up on this graph. There's another couple interesting things that you can do, and that's up here in the top right corner. These are all just time series at the moment. That doesn't make maybe a whole lot of sense for what I'm doing here. Maybe stat would make more sense. And so, you can have other things here on your dashboard. Some of the things that I found that was really fun is there's a gauge. And so it may not make a whole lot of sense with the days. Although we could probably go in and set the max to, I don't know, something like that, and give it a sort of a target. We want to be up that long at least. We'll see what happens here in a minute when that pulls in with some data. But all kinds of fun ways that you can use Grafana and customize these things and build a dashboard. I've been having a lot of fun with it. I'm going to continue playing around with Grafana. I've got something else for next week, but for now, this has been a lot of fun to play with.
Now, does it support more advanced plotting like Bodie plots or logarithmic or things like that?
You can. I know it can do logarithmic. I've not messed a whole lot with that. I don't know for sure about Bodie plots, but I bet it's possible.
If it can do logarithmic, that's a big one there. Bodie's a little specific for things.
Yeah, I've never heard of it.
It's used a lot of time for frequency type plots. It's kind of a logarithmic, but each 10 to 100 is kind of its own mini logarithmic scale.
Yeah. Not saying I haven't seen it, but maybe I just didn't know what it was called.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it's got a bunch of different options that you could use for stuff like that. You can even go in and set thresholds. I've not messed with this yet, but you can do thresholds to where it will give you, I think, alerts. I don't know all of the details of what you can do with that, but I know that you can set those up, and it'll take actions of some sort when something happens. So some really, really interesting stuff there. A lot of fun to play with. All right, I think that is it. I'm going to let each of the guys get the last word in on whatever they want to, or plug their stuff. I think Rob, if he can stay awake for it, is going to come and plug his coffee fund. Definitely needs that today.
Yeah, if I'm looking at this panel we have here today, besides you, Jonathan, I feel like we all look a little bit tired. So maybe it's time to send some coffees our way. So, and how you can do that is you can go to robertpcampbell.com and then scroll down a little bit, or if you have a big screen, you shouldn't have to scroll down, but there's links to my LinkedIn where you can connect with me, Twitter, my Blue Sky, my Mastodon, and then finally on the left, or I guess if you're reading left to right, like most of us do around here, the coffee is actually first. There's this little coffee cup here. You can donate a coffee to me. And now, if you guys are sick and tired of me being so mean to Mint all the time, go ahead, donate here and tell me about it. And tell me to stop doing it. But if you like it, if you like it, the things I am saying here about Mint, go ahead and donate a coffee here and tell me about it there. And if you want to donate these coffee to these guys, you can donate it there too, and just tell me in the comments who it's for, and I'll get it to them someday.
Eventually, we'll get together and have some coffee, and Rob's buying.
And Rob has paid me off, so he is good about, he will pay.
Yep. Jeff and I are equal, even.
So you've paid him all the coffees you've got up to today?
Yeah. I paid him in advance of one, I think.
One coffee.
One
and
coffee.
Then I got one.
And then he got one since then. So we are even.
So I'm even. So everybody that donated a coffee to me, I got it. He hand delivered it to where the state I live. Yes. Several states away.
At a bar.
Yeah.
And in the form of a dark liquid that wasn't coffee.
It looked like coffee.
Didn't have quite the same effects, though. All right,
keep you awake?
Probably not. All right, Jeff, what you got for us?
If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, you got to connect with Rob first, and then try to connect with me, because I get too many fake profiles trying to connect with me. But if I don't recognize one and I see you're connected to Rob, then I'll know. So just FYI there. The only other thing is a little bit of poetry. Wind catches lily, scattering petals to the wind. Segmentation fault. Have a great week, everybody.
Oh, the old seg fault. All right, Ken.
Well, as we get ready for spring and get ready to do that spring cleaning, just want to remind everyone, please back up first, not after.
Back up before you do your spring cleaning. Yes.
I can't back up all those physical things I'm taking to the dump.
Well, lesson learned. I thought you need to double check, because I thought I backed up my documents directory and I lost some poetry and notes.
Oh no!
Remember when it was going through the cache install, and I nuked my Kubuntu, and I backed up, but I didn't fully back up.
There you go. That'll do it.
One directory. You'd be surprised how important that one directory can be sometimes.
That's why I prefer a full system backup.
True.
Give me an image and I can split up.
It wasn't horribly painful, because I had some recent, like a month ago backup. So it wasn't terrible, but still.
It wasn't horribly painful because it was his poetry. And
well, I had some other documents.
Oh, that was very painful.
It's not exactly Vogon poetry, but...
I mean, it wasn't even his poetry. It was
Go have a pan-galactic gargle blaster, Jonathan.
It was someone else's poetry.
All right. Let's see. Did we let Ken get the last word in? He told us to back everything up. Yes. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys being here. We have had a blast today talking about Linux. If you want to find more of me, there is, of course, Hackaday. That is still where Floss Weekly is at. And we've had a couple of weeks off unintentionally. We've got a guest scheduled for this week. And then, next week. This week when you're listening to it, next week when we're recording. But then the week after that, hopefully, if we can pull it off, something really special. It's going to be really interesting and different. So make sure and keep an eye out for that. Other than that, just want to say thank you to everyone. Whether you watch or listen, whether you get us live on the download, we sure appreciate it. And we'll be back. We'll see you next week on the Untitled Linux Show.